Once again, good morning.
Morning.
We are at Freiburg New Church Assembly. This is Monday, August the 13th. And when I wrote the word 13, I was thinking about how often some of us are, afraid to get on an elevator where there's a 13th floor, so they don't put the 13th floor on the selection. And I looked up the number 13 in the church doctrines, and would you believe that back in the ancient days, 13 was a lucky number. 13 represented happy remains. So this is August the 13th. Let's have a happy day and build some happy remains. I have the pleasure of having the first lecture, and my lecture title grew from the fact that this week we're talking about trips, journeys, and things of that, and we're going to focus on many of the characters in the Word who went on a famous and important trip. Now, not that I don't want to hear them, but I wanted to elicit in us a kind of a thought. Let's begin by saying the following question. How can I prepare my affections for this daily trip with the Lord? How can I better take a journey? So that's what I want to do. Now, I also opened up some of the Swedenborg Concordance, and I looked up trip, journey, and things of that kind, and I came across the following quote. I'm always one that believes that the Lord steers us. Listen to these two quotes found in the Spiritual Diary, or Spiritual Experiences as it is now called. Let me just read it. If people would attend to their reflection, they would find more heavenly secrets in the doctrine of reflection than in any other doctrine. Isn't that a wonderful quote? That if you and I learn to reflect while studying the Word, while thinking about the Lord, while thinking about our life, that reflection can give us more heavenly secrets than in any other doctrine. And then he continues by saying, without reflection, no one can know what their interior life is. Nay, without reflection from the knowledges of truth in the Word, no one is reformed. And so I feel my task as I prepare to give this talk is to work on presenting you with an idea of let's reflect together about the fact that we woke up this morning. The Lord has in His providence some wonderful things that are ahead of us. So let's be open to reflect, to think about it. Now, psychologists have found out that when you and I came into this world, we learned an awful lot from the simple thing called contrasts. Now, I've only selected 10, but you may add to this list. Think about it. We came into this world as a baby, and we were very conscious of hot, cold, wet, dry, full, empty, light, darkness, sparkly, dull, happy, sad, soft, rough. We started to learn that that's true, that's false. We learned that I'm safe, or that's danger. We learned to be happy or sad. We learned to be rested or tired. So you see, contrasts are part of this thing called reflection. Our whole life is a continual learning through contrasts. So again, I'm wanting to build us with the thought of let's be good reflectors. So what I'm going to do in this talk is I'm going to put a chart on here. I want to start out with us reflecting on this thing called soul. having a wonderful time here. Soul. We're taught in the writings, and there's a series called Apocalypse Explained, volume number 6. There are 2 sections, chapters in the back. One's called Divine Love, and one's called Divine Wisdom. So if you ever pick up AE, pick up the 6th volume. And there's an interesting teaching in volume 6, under Divine Wisdom, that says the following thing. The Lord conjoins himself in the mother's womb from the moment of conception. Now, scientists have found they've been able to take a picture of the sperm and the ovary uniting, and it says when that conjunction occurs, they've recorded a flash of light. Now, scientists don't say that was the Lord coming in, but I would like to suggest that at the moment of conception, the Lord flowed in and formed our soul. And then it says the Lord made that, now I'm going to use a military term, I'm a military vet, he makes it his command post. And from that command post, he began to form and shape and direct and to give us ideas. And it says that the Lord, now how many people do you suppose are in the world about now, right this moment? What would be your guess?
7.3 billion.
You're very close, my friend, 7.5 million. And everyone is born, but because the Lord is infinite, everyone is, what was the song again that the 3 girls sang?
Unique.
Everybody is unique and
different.
Special. 7.5 billion unique peoples. And the Lord is in our soul. And he stays there. And he's directing us and trying to lead us to think about things. So that flash at conception is the Lord just bringing in this wonderful life. That forming is magnificent. The soul is a place where the Lord will always reside. He will never abandon us. There is the interesting thing, though, it goes on to say that only the Lord knows where the soul is. Not even the highest angels. Not even the hells. Not anybody knows where that soul is located. Only the Lord knows why. Now let's play a little bit of reflection. Why do you think the Lord created the soul so that no one could ever find it? Not forensic files. Lois and I love watching forensic files. The things that science is able to do to discover. Why would the Lord make it so that not even Swedenborg, who spent 30 years thinking of trying to find the soul, ended up saying, it can't be found. Why would the Lord do that, Martha?
So that no one could harm it.
No one can harm it. Now, we are people of curiosity. Can you imagine if I could say, well, the soul is located here, and I could prove it? What do you think science would want to do if we could locate where the soul was located? What would they do? I mean, yes. They would go in, they would want to examine it, they would break down its components, and probably they would try to clone it.
Yeah.
Or if they would probably GMO it. They would try to, but the Lord says, no. No one's going to be able to get in. Hells can't get in and mess with it. I am there. I am its protector. I am with you always. And I'm going to make you unique. No 2 snowflakes are alike. Is that true?
I guess.
I mean, that's a song. It's a thing. But the Lord just uniquely is with us. And what is the Lord's intention and goal for us? He wants to make our soul, your soul, unique and responsive. And so I'm suggesting that before we begin talking about a trip and a journey, We know where it all started. At the moment of conception, when the Lord flowed in and made it his center of operation. So you see, I think once in a while hell likes to play mind games with us, telling us that we're alone, telling us that the Lord has abandoned us, and I think we need to stand up and say to the face of hell, you're wrong. I wrote a little reflection last night. I try to do this every day on Facebook. You know, when you get into an argument, do you like getting the last word? Hell loves to argue with us and loves to get the last word. Remember the 40 days of temptation when the Lord was in the wilderness? They took him up into the mountain and they thought they had 3 of the most clever arguments to defeat the Lord. You remember what it was? Jump off this edge, and the angels who will not let you dash your foot against the stones will catch you. If you look out over this great universe, we're in control of everyone, and if you bow down before us, we'll let you control and talk to them. Turn these stones into bread. And the Lord didn't let them get the last word. Do you remember what he said to them? Get thee behind me, Satan. And when he was on the cross, everybody was pointing and laughing and ridiculing and pointing out, isn't this the son of the carpenter? And what were the Lord's last words, which were often presented as being defeat? What were his last words?
It is finished.
It is finished! Exclamation point. Everything that hell tried to do to interfere with that, everything that hell tried to do to interrupt the journey and the trip that you and I are taking, they thought they had the last word. But when the Lord said it is finished, he was saying, I have met and I have conquered every sneaky, deceitful trick hell tried to pull on you. It is finished. And so I think we need to, as we gather here together, confidently say, I have a soul. It's hidden. It is beyond anybody's getting and messing with. It is finished. The Lord has given us this example. So I love that. Now, it says that what the Lord wants us to do is to know the following things. And many of you know this scripture, but let me say them again so that we can put them in our heart and reflect on them. Do you remember what the Lord said to Jeremiah? I know the thoughts I have for you. I have thoughts of peace, not evil. I have thoughts to give you a future and a hope. The Lord in our command post is saying this. I have a plan for you. It's a unique plan. It's different than the plan I have for somebody else. But it's a plan. And it's to give you peace and it's to give you hope. And then I love the fact, again, in Jeremiah, the Lord said, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. I mean, that is something else. Before conception occurred, I knew you. And I have a plan for you. We are indeed specially unique. That we have a divine potential that exceeds anything that we could even imagine. Now, may I just step aside? When I was a child, I started loving to go to Sunday school. This was before I found the new church. I still love to go to Sunday school. But I had a dream as a child that I wanted to be a minister. That I wanted to serve the Lord. Now, as I grew up and went to high school, it was not cool to talk about I want to be a minister. And I tried every which way for a while to ignore that call that was coming out of my command post. But then there came a time when I went into the military and I had this nagging thought, what am I going to do with my life? And that little voice came back strong and clear again. I want you to be a minister. And when I went into college, it was overwhelming after 4 years in the military, and I was not sure I was ready to go to college. And I was in a chapel, and it was as if a clear voice spoke to me, not that anybody else heard it, but I heard this voice say to me, George, you're going to make it. And I can't tell you, this was my freshman year in college, the peace that settled in that told me that the trip and the journey that I was about to take was going to be successful. Now, I may not be the Billy Graham of the world, I don't care about that, but I am a teacher who comes and dedicates himself to this new church and to this thing called the writings of the church. And I want to preach my heart out till the day I die, telling you what a great and wonderful journey the Lord has taken me on. And I'm hoping in this discussion and question and answer period, we talk about, I've reflected, I've heard this voice, I know what I want to do, and I feel the Lord is calling me. Don't let hell come and mess with you, telling you, don't listen to that stuff, you know, go out and make yourself $1 million or do this or that. But you and I can serve the Lord. So, let's begin then by saying, the next thing I want to write on the board, if I can keep from, is let's talk about trip, journey, and plan. The Lord has a trip. Now listen to what it says a trip represents. A trip is a plan to journey, to get ourselves into motion, getting underway, launching. So the Lord has a plan for each of us to get us into motion. He wants us to get underway, and boy, does He want to have... You ever see a ship when it's been built? They have that launching where they smash a bottle of champagne against the hull of and the boat goes out. Well, I think the Lord is there. He's smashed that bottle of champagne against our ship, and He's launched us. Travel signifies learning to develop in changes of state. So each day, each year, the Lord is launching us, and He's trying to get us to get underway, and He wants us to have changes of state. I don't want to be the same. I once heard this say, if I'm the same today as I was yesterday, I haven't done a very good day's work. Would you agree with that? We need to be changing states. We can't hang on to all the yesterdays. We need to face something brand new. Journey, the writings say, is the following thing. It is to seek order in our lives. Seeking order in our lives relates to getting instruction and thence life. Disposing things so that we are ordering our life. Now, if you can think of it this way, the Lord is launching us. The Lord is encouraging us. He's in our command post in our soul. And He wants us to go through various states. Now, every one of us in this room has experienced moving and taking a journey northward. Now, in a figurative way, north represents that which is in obscurity. A cold fact that we haven't put into life yet. So, our life is going to involve us once in a while where we pick up the Word and we read something and it doesn't quite make sense. We're not sure how to apply it. But isn't it wonderful that once in a while, after we think, after we read, after we study, after we reflect, looking at contrast, sometimes the northern state goes from that cold state of indifference to where we go south. South is where it's warmer, where we move into, oh, I think I see how that truth that was in the north relates and begins to be warm. So the Lord will take us on a journey southward. Now we're talking spiritually, aren't we? Southward. And then there are times where the Lord will take us on a journey where we go westward. And the writings say west represents the following things. It's taking what used to be obscure, fighting to push off that obscurity, to take on to ourselves, thinking about things that make us wise. And so we will take a trip westward where we learn to take what was northward in obscurity and where we had some warmth to where we gain knowledges. And then, of course, the greatest trip that you and I will take will be eastward. Now, east was a place that was always represented as the place where the Lord resides and where His church is. And so, throughout our life, we will have our north experiences. We will have our south experiences. We will have our west experiences. But we need to have a place in church, in Freiburg, some place where we experience worshiping the Lord in a state of east. Now I'm going to quickly ask the question, can any of you attest to being in the north? It comes, but I think that there are a lot of times a good question, and when we're in obscurity, can help lead us in a southward experience, in a west and an east. So what I want to propose is, I think that the Lord has a great plan for us to experience those four things. And I want to put a word up here that I want to build a new feeling. I don't know what your experience is about the word doctrine. Do any of you feel like the word doctrine is castor oil? Yeah. All that doctrine stuff, I've got to learn that. I have learned to do battle with that resistance to learn doctrine on my journey, on my trip. I have learned that doctrine really means that which points the way. Doctrine is our GPS. How many of us here today travel with our car and we've got our GPS with us? Come on, let me see. Is that GPS not wonderful?
Yes.
I mean, I had to visit this previous Sunday. I had to go to 2 hospitals, and they were separated. And I got in my car with my little thing, and I turned on my GPS, and it led me to 2 hospitals. I had absolutely no idea how in the world to get to it, and from there to the next one. This thing guided me with its quiet, assuring voice and led me that I did not make one single mistake in getting to those 2 hospitals and finding my way. Doctrine is a word that I think we have to come in our journey to appreciate and not let us feel that it's castor oil, that it's boring. Doctrine is exciting. Now, the thing I like about doctrine as a GPS, it is flexible. For instance, it can tell us there's a detour up ahead. Here's a route to get around the detour. You have to update the GPS regularly, do you not?
Yes.
Because the new roads are put in. Doctrine can lead us on a short route from point A to point B, or if we've got extra time, it can give us a wonderful long-distance ride. Lois and I are planning to take a trip through Canada. We're going to go from the east coast of Canada to the west coast, and we're going to have our little GPS guiding us, helping us. But I love doctrine in the fact that it can give me a short route, or it can give me the scenic route. It can warn me that there's a detour, go around it. Now, once in a while, we find our GPS tells us that the building's on the left, but it's on the right. Have you ever had that experience? I don't know what happens. Is it something that, why is it telling me the building's on the left when really is? That's all right. But, you know, the GPS and the doctrine that you and I have is a very important thing. So, friends, I encourage you, don't let somebody tell you doctrine is castor oil. And again, I just had this quick reflection. My grandmother, who brought me up, I guess she was taught from the time that when spring time was coming, it was time to clean the body out, and she would always make me take sulfur and molasses. Now, molasses you take first, and you put the sulfur in, the sulfur would stick to the roof of your mouth, and it was awful. I mean, I can remember I'd run to not take my sulfur and molasses. But I do not want to get that same experience with doctrine. I want to find it exciting, helpful. So here you and I are trying to keep finding. Now, do you remember the quote I used this morning, which I think I absolutely like? It's from Arcana Celestia 33:24. If you want to write that number down, subsection 10. Doctrinal things of the church are nothing unless its members live according to those doctrines. So you see, we can't say, oh, I don't want to study that thing called doctrine. I don't want to take it on my trip. I want to laissez-faire. Whatever happens, happens. No, I want doctrine to be a thing that we say, I need to have it, and if I don't get it involved in my life, and I don't live according to it, members need to live according to the doctrines of our church. And why? You remember the quote? The word is unintelligible without doctrine. The Lord is doctrine himself. And all of doctrine proceeds from the Lord. And the doctrine treats of the Lord. So if you and I get to the point where we think that we can get along without doctrine and not applying it to life on our journey, we make a serious mistake. So doctrine is our GPS. And so I have shared with you what the doctrines say. So I want to go on then to the next point. Do you remember, do any of you sing that song, All That the Lord Has Spoken? You know that song? Some of you know. All that the Lord has spoken, we will do and hear. You know what I like about that? Is as I'm doing the things of the church and doctrine, as I'm doing them, the Lord sees that I'm trying to do them, and he will let me hear more. May I say that again? That's a quote, by the way, from Exodus 24, verse 3. All that the Lord has spoken, we will do and hear. Doing leads to hearing. So as I pack, as I put on the doctrine, as I listen to the GPS, and as I faithfully do what I feel the Lord's calling, I'm going to hear more. Don't do, you don't hear. So our journey then is a kind of thing where we cooperate, where we find that there's no escaping, there's no doubt about it. The Lord has a plan for us. And this is the last point I want to go into, and then I want to turn it to discussion. The last thing I want to put here is do and hear. No one escapes having to do the trip. $7.5 billion people, and the Lord has a plan. He has a unique plan. None of us can escape being responsible to the Lord to follow his call and his leadership. So here we're going to talk about looking at many heroes in the scriptures, the Abrahams, the Jacobs, the Isaac. Oh, and Jacob, I absolutely love that story, and this just popped into my head. Do you remember when Jacob stole the birthright from Esau? And he fled, and he went into the wilderness. And while he was in the wilderness, it says a storm came up and was swirling all around him. And out of nowhere, Jacob heard the words, "You are the apple of my eye." Isn't that wonderful? I mean, seriously, think about that. You, everyone sitting here, we are the apple of the Lord's eye. He's in our command post. He's in there encouraging us. He's in there trying to give us the last word against hell. You know, they didn't win the argument because the Lord is there. So, friends, I want to go back and just look at those points again. Soul. That's the beginning of our journey. Doctrine. That's the input from the Lord. Let's do so that we hear. And not one of us in this room is escaping the plan that the Lord has for us. I mean, yes, we may put it off, we may ignore it, but the Lord is always there. And I love the fact that he never gets discouraged. He never says, "How many times do I have to tell you, George?" He is there. And I found a quote the other day, and this is my last statement, and then I want to turn it over to a good discussion. I have a feeling that everyone in this room has buried in their soul that I'm successful. I mean, that's the message that the Lord's sending. You and I are the apple of his eye. He will accompany us on our journey. When we fall down, he will, and this is a quote from the Arcana, he will continually pick us up. He doesn't give up on us. And I don't want to give up on the Lord, and I want to hear that little voice come to me often and say, "George, you're going to make it." So, friends, we have a journey to make. None of us can escape it. And we've got these wonderful little things called the GPS, the doctrines, that will teach us the short way, the avoidance of the detour, or they'll take us on the long scenic road. Doctrine is that which points the way. On that note, may I have from all of you a question, a comment, a response?
You mentioned in your talk that after 4 years of the military and maybe a year of college, you got the message that this is what you're going to do for life's work. This was your use. Do you feel that in the hereafter, this will continue with you? I overword, but this will be your use in hereafter.
I have so many questions to ask the Lord, and I'm not saying this, I'm looking to the excitement of, yes, you're going to succeed, and I've got a lot more to show you and teach you. And, the writings say what the Lord knows, what we know and compared to what the Lord is infinitesimal. He's got an awful lot to show me and teach me and lead me and excite me. And I'm looking forward to, in the spiritual world, continuing this wonderful, exciting journey.
I don't like change, George. I don't like change at all. I want to stay right where I am, and I don't want anything to change. But you can't do that. That's all. I get something will happen, something will come up that maybe it's doctrine, maybe it's a plan will come up that'll say, you got to change now. You've got to move. You got to move, Dean.
Isn't it wonderful, though, thank you for bringing that point. Isn't it wonderful, though, that I bet you've had times where you've looked back and what you thought was you looked and saw that was a miraculous point where something was blocked that made you choose and go to another thing. And that's a tremendous, wonderful change in the journey.
That's right, yep.
You know, on our trip up here from Pennsylvania, we used our GPS. And our GPS took us on the most bizarre roads that you would ever imagine, through little country lanes and little country roads to avoid all the messed up areas. You know, and sometimes I feel like that's exactly what my life is doing. Is like, okay, nope, you're gonna go this way because that's pretty messed up. And it's trusting. I think it's trusting that this road doesn't look like the main highway, but maybe it's the right way after all. You know, and then being able to trust in the Lord's providence that He's leading you in a direction, even though it might not feel very comfortable.
George, I like that you, when you said that we can't stop this, this is where we're doing this, we have to be on this journey. And I went back to a time when my husband and I prepared a trip for the kids. We took an entire month off in July, and we spent 28 days in our car living in a tent, or basically living in a tent. And this was we, in great detail, we planned this trip, what we were going to eat, what we took, where we were going to spend our time. And as we started this journey across the United States, our kids were in protest. I don't want to do it. This is stupid. I don't, as we got further west, their devices slowly went away, and they started looking around, and when they were getting to different parts of the United States that they had not seen before. And then they became engaged. And now that trip it's the trip. Any trip we have taken since is compared to that. When we reflect back on to that trip, it was the trip. And I think we do that in our own life. We don't want to do something. We don't want to change. We don't want to move forward. But then when we turn around and look, that was the gate of everything forward.
Yeah. Right behind you.
I like the analogy of the GPS being the doctrine. I'm thinking about Google Maps. When you put in and ask for directions, it'll give you choices of whether you're walking, you're in a car, you're on a plane, or on a bicycle, and it doesn't matter how you get there. It's going to show you the right way.
Yeah.
How many of you remember that? Look, I forget what was called footsteps in the sand. Do you remember that one?
Footprints in the sand. Yeah.
The punchline was, Lord, I thought you said you were always going to accompany me on my trip of life. And looked back and I saw that there were two sets of prints, but then all of a sudden there was only one set of prints. What happened to you, Lord? Do you remember the punchline?
Yes. Yes. I was carrying you.
Yes. At some point, when the road got too tough, the Lord picked us up. And so instead of there being the two sets of prints, there was the one where He picked us up and carried us on. There was a hand up, I didn't.
What would you, you kind of talked about our journeys and like the paths we follow in life. It's kind of like the GPS thing. What would you say to a person who, as an analogy, is so focused on like the next intersection that they can't focus on the present? Because I think for some of us who are just heading off to college, like we're so fixated on like the future that it's kind of hard to come back to planet reality. Like, what would God say to someone who like is struggling to focus on the present in that way?
That's a good question.
I think the Lord likes to leave us in freedom, to let us make some choices. But when we've come to the dead end and we're not sure, we just turn again to the Lord and say, can you redirect me? Or maybe this was an important thing for me to learn, that in and of myself, I'm going to hit a blank wall. But if I trust you, you're going to find me and direct me with your wonderful, and God positioning system is going to shift me to go around. I think I need to be flexible and ready to trust that the Lord's going to let me hit that blank wall, but then he's going to pick me up because I'm the apple of his eye and he's going to redirect me. I need to hold that as a belief and not quit. Honey?
My response to that is that as you look for your beginning college or whatever place you are in your education, I think you sort of search for truth in that journey. And so even though it's right there, you have an opportunity to learn what's truth and what's good and truth. And so therefore you could do it in your search for science and math or whatever part of education you're doing, you can apply it together.
Was it Edison that said this thing? I don't know that I have the quote correctly. I tried something 1,000 times and failed. That showed me 1,000 times the wrong way.
I've got it. He said, I have not failed. I've just tried. I've just found 1,000 ways that won't work.
Okay. But, you know, there was optimism that was there, you know. So, and one of the famous basketball players said the same thing. You know, he had a great basketball shooting average, but he said a lot of the misses led to my being able to score the next one. And so,
Barrett Perry, I just wanted to hear Sam's question as well, so I'm going to respond to that. It seems that he is preparing to go to college. That's a great thing. So, and the question was, it's so much in his mind that how does he stay in the present?
Yeah.
So, the way I think of that is that at various stages of life, and you're in a stage of life where the priority is preparing to go to college in a couple of weeks or months. So that's going to be in your mind. That's the way it is, in a way. Now, if you can accept that, you can then afford not to worry about it too much because you're already doing your planning. And then just relax and enjoy the present. And then when it comes back in your mind, there might be something else to plan for. Do it, then relax, but it's going to come back because that is a big thing. And you can enjoy the present in that way.
Congratulations.
Trevor has given me his wonderful reminder. We have about two minutes left.
Nancy had her hand up, and I just want to say as I pass the mic, just thinking about I'm not in the present moment brings you back to the present moment.
I think Jesus said the moment of salvation is now.
Can you repeat that for me?
The moment of salvation is now.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say thank you, George. I always find your lectures very uplifting. And as someone who has been constantly watching my path change and shift and not seeing the future, I think I needed your lecture today, so thank you.
Well, my moment of excitement and finding doctrine came when I met this beautiful girl at Temple University, who I was going to try to convert her from her heathenism to Presbyterianism. Her mother gave me a starting set of the writings. I started to read them, and one of the first volumes I picked up was True Christian Religion. Because you see, as a kid, I went into the church and I kept saying, I don't understand the concept of the Trinity. And I picked up TCR and read the first 3 chapters, and I said, my goodness, here is the most simplified, most beautiful, directive answer. And it led from me trying to convert her from her heathenism to me finding a new life and a new doctrine. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being willing to reflect, to see contrasts, and to hear the voice of the Lord calling us to follow and enjoy the trip. Thank you.